I thought it would be really nice for us to go around, introduce ourselves, along with where we're dialing in from. And maybe a question we can start with is, what is our fondest memory of being outdoors? So I'll start. So I'm Heidi. I'm dialing in from Petaluma. And one of my fondest memories of being outdoors is, as a little girl, me and my brother would take walks up to the mountain behind our house. And I remember the feeling of just this freedom, not to be in this chaotic, loud house, but being loud and chaotic with my brother in the outdoors was another kind of experience. And I always have those as a fond memory of my experience being with someone that I cared about in the outdoors, exploring.
Thanks, Heidi. I'll go next. When I was a kid, we would go down to a place called Lago de Arareco in the state of Chihuahua. It's in the Sierra Tarahumara. It's a very beautiful place, and there was this cabin, a single cabin, that was available for rent. And I remember my godparents, my mom, my sister, like just a big group of family, we'd rent it. We did it maybe 2 or 3 times. There's this awesome dock, and I just remember my fondest memories are kind of just being out there surrounded by this lake and this beautiful scenery and with family. So thanks, Heidi.
I'll go next. So I'm Lou Zwire. I'm in Petaluma also. And I've been a backpacker my whole life. And one of my favorite memories is when I was a teenager. For the first time, I hiked into Cascade Valley, which is in the Sierra Nevadas. And it's a tough hike. It's like 15 miles over a 12,000 foot pass or something like that. And so I have a very favorite memory of languishing in the sun in the grass of the valley after a very long hike in. That's a very favorite memory. With my brother-in-law. He and I did it together.
I will go. My name is Ross Whiffler. I am dialing in from Santa Rosa, California. I apologize for having my camera off, but I'm recently recovering from a little bit of surgery, so I'm not at my photogenic best. Outdoors, much like Lou, I'm an avid backpacker, and one of my first trips was the entirety of the John Muir Trail, and it was so difficult and so satisfying that I spent a lot of the trip thinking I would never do it again. And after spending 24 hours on top of Mount Whitney, contemplating life, I had already planned trips, and I took trips for over 20 consecutive years thereafter and changed my life. So that's my flashback experience for the outdoors.
Thanks for sharing, Ross.
I'm Gigi. I will share a little bit. I'm calling in from Miami, Florida today. And for those of us just joining us, I know Barbara just hopped on. We are sharing our fondest outdoor memory. So growing up in Florida, everything is really flat. Of course, we have our beautiful beaches. So when I moved to California, I was so excited to go on my first hike and go up a mountain. So my fondest memory is of hiking Mission Peak near Fremont, California, and just going all the way to the top, seeing above sea level for the first time in my life, and just seeing all the texture that was in the distance.
I could go next. I'm Tamara. I am dialing in from Albuquerque. One of my fondest memories is actually, it's kind of interesting that we bring that up. I had just posted a picture of the beach in San Francisco this morning on my Instagram, and I had tagged my siblings in it because I remember my mom taking us after school or on the weekends to the beach. So it was a picture of that exact same beach, the exact same location, and it was just kind of nice little memory.
I'm Dave Whitridge. I think I'm not muted, and I'm calling in from Marin County. That's not really the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. That's a little scene that Genesis helped me set up, but that's actually about where I am. And I guess one of my favorite outdoor memories was when I was in the Army in Germany, and I wasn't much of a skier, but I went with some friends to Mont Blanc And we took a 26-mile ski run down from Mount Blanc down to Chamonix. And I felt like I was flying most of the way. And I was stoked on skiing from then on. So.
Hi, everyone. This is Elena. I also need to keep my camera off for right now, but I'm happy to be part of the conversation. I spent about half my life in Maine, and one of my fondest memories I can think of is every summer I went to a camp where in the evening we would, as campers, go over to a large field that overlooked a lake to watch the sunset. And this was long before people had cell phones, and we weren't allowed to bring any disposable cameras or anything with us to take pictures of the sunset. The whole point was to sit in silence and meditate as we watched the sunset over a beautiful lake. And that, yeah, I'll always remember those years doing that. And I'm also in Albuquerque, like Julian.
Thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I live in Santa Rosa, California. It's hard to even know the favorite outdoor memory. There's so millions of them, but one that speaks to me right now is many years ago, traveling to the Golden Trout Wilderness area in the southern Sierra Nevadas, and going on horseback into the wilderness, and just being quiet on the trail with a horse who is smelling all the scratches on the trees from the bears and hyper alert, and just being so close to nature out there and being able to see the Milky Way at night was just breathtaking and just amazing memory. Thank you.
I think that might be all of us.
Yes. Today, the team and myself are really looking forward to our conversation with Laura Mundell.
So Lara is executive director and co-founder of the Mosaic Project. And she is an anthropologist by training and has dedicated her time and energy to fomenting a more peaceful world by impacting in particular the youth. So welcome to the forum, Lara. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Definitely, Heidi knows this, but I love to talk about my work. There's nothing I love more to talk about. So really appreciate this. And it comes at a really special time. We just got back. In fact, we finished cleaning up the camp yesterday. So we've been focusing on online resources and finally recording our second album that you were just listening to at the beginning, and there were some silver linings for us, but all the while we knew that there's nothing like being at the outdoor school in the great outdoors, as we just talked about. And definitely the experience that we just had confirmed that, that I'm really proud of our curriculum and all the programs we do, but the magic really happens at the outdoor school where we bring fourth and fifth graders from different backgrounds together. And it is a little hard to explain exactly what it's like. So what I would like to do is start by sharing a 5-minute video that, if that's okay,
Yes.
that really I think captures the spirit of the outdoor school. Teach our kids during the week with us. They get 3 keys to peace. And every time we say 3 keys to peace, the kids say, because they just started it and we kept it jingle, jingle, baby. But our 3 keys to peace are listening, and we go in great depth about listening, empathy, and assertiveness, assertive communication, being strong without being mean, being kind without being weak, which is the foundation for peacemaking in all our conversation. And we talk about how that's all our peacemaking heroes. That's what they did. They fought for human rights without using violence. They stopped the violence and spread peace instead. So that's the assertiveness. And we also talk about 3 peace blockers: blame, guilt, and defensiveness. And there are songs about all of those things. So yeah, it just was wonderful to hear that, because there's so much overlap there. Oh, and I'm not supposed to share about my outdoor experience. My family was not a camping family, and I always wanted to backpack. And but every summer we would go to Yosemite, And I think that really I developed my love for the outdoors there in Yosemite. And then as soon as I got to college, I joined a backpacking class, and I too am now an avid backpacker. But the experience of going to the Yosemite Institute when I was in high school with a biology class, I think really showed me the power of the outdoors when it comes to learning. And I will say that the kids being in a beautiful environment at a camp, under the stars, that many of them have never seen stars like that before, and being away from their schools and their usual stomping ground, it's the magic ingredient to what we do. It's what makes it different than doing an in-school program where we can have some impact, but it's not like being at the outdoor school where they're with us a week and in this beautiful setting. That it's the little dose of magic that makes the whole experience possible. Yeah, so that's me in the outdoors. All right. And I've also enjoyed the Golden Trout Wilderness for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much to talk about with what you said already, but we'll go ahead and share that video. I think it's a wonderful introduction. You're right. So well produced. So here it is.
Oh, you have it there. Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Here we are many years after Brown versus Board of Education, and yet our schools and our communities are just as segregated as ever. You have schools that are physically so close to each other and yet worlds apart. Our children are growing up with little or no exposure to people different from themselves. This separation leads to fear and prejudice, discrimination, and violence. And the cycle just continues. It isn't hopeless. There is something we can do, and it's pretty simple. We know that when people actually meet people, know people who are different from them, we can break through those misunderstandings. This is what inspired me to create the Mosaic Project. The Mosaic Project breaks this cycle by reaching students before negative attitudes about difference become entrenched. Our principal program is our outdoor school. In each session, we bring together approximately 90 4th and 5th graders from very different schools, very different communities. We provide fun, immersive, experiential programs that address issues of difference, empathy, and conflict resolution.
I learned about being assertive. It's strong without being mean. You should stand up for yourself instead of being passive.
I said jump.
No, I will not jump. The reason why I like Mosaic is it teaches you how to have mutual respect, self-respect, how to be open-minded, how to get to know people better.
Students participate all together in large group sessions by the campfire. And then they split off into smaller groups.
What you gonna do to try to stay cool?
I'm gonna lay down.
Lay down. And my favorite thing to dream about while I'm laying is this.
Stop, cool off, and take a deep breath.
What?
The Mosaic Project is so much more than anti-bullying or social and emotional learning. It's both of those things, but it also puts everything into the context of these social systems that we're all a part of.
Prejudice is a judgment made about someone without knowing the person.
We intentionally bring together a group of diverse adults, usually more diverse than the students have ever seen, all working together and who clearly love one another and have a really good time together. And this is essential to what we do.
I love bringing out whatever they're hiding inside of them and just having them open up and blossom like I did while I was here.
What I love about Mosaic is that it's one of those places where you can be your total self, and there's not many places like that.
I was very shy at first. I wasn't talking that much until my cabin leader, Juan, he told me some of his backstory, told him some of mine. He made me feel very comfortable at Mosaic, and he opened me up. I want to give other kids the opportunity that Juan has given me.
The changes that we see in the students and the youth leaders in just 1 week are incredible.
I came from a place of a lot of privilege. Getting to know people from different backgrounds did change my life in many different ways. Coming back as a youth leader, I feel like I'm doing the action that I wanted to do when I was in 4th grade. I've seen students become more empathetic for one another and be able to talk to each other.
I see barriers breaking down every day. There's just something about this place that does that.
I used to not want to be friends with people who were a lot different than me, but now I have a lot of friends who are different than me. I met a friend named Alonzo. One of my other friends is Theo. Alonzo and Theo are both in my cabin. They're nice people. They're good friends.
I learned a lot of things, and everybody has been so kind to me. I think I'll come back when I'm 15 as a cabin leader. I want to teach other kids the way of Mosaic.
Mosaic. Every now and then, I watch interactions between children from drastically different backgrounds, actually talking to one another, actually empathizing, actually hearing each other's stories. And it will really hit me like, wow, nowhere else but here would they even be sitting anywhere near each other, let alone talking. And that's how we're going to change the world.
Thank you so much, Genesis, for showing that, and Lara for contextualizing a little bit of that. I just want to say that that video really gets to me. I've seen it many times now. And I think it partly gets to me because in a way, I think the kid that I was still lives in me in a way. And the work that we see in this video, a tiny glimpse of it, right, is squarely situated in the formative years of the next generation. And so it's incredibly powerful. There's a quote that references youth and that path of discovering of what you want out of life. And it says something like, the youth first know what they do not want before they know what they want. And I've heard it being applied to choosing a career, for example, but I think it has broader implications. And the Mosaic Project, to me, seems to be premised on the idea that no kid wants a violent world nor a discriminatory society. It is almost as if you are all harnessing this common ground, but then building on it. And you are all creating a different path, showing youth things, practices, and values such as assertiveness, a path that they might want, but did not know it exists. And so I'm wondering if that can get us thinking about the work you're doing, which is essentially peace building for the present, but for the future. Very clearly, I mean, you say it in the video, it's these formative years that are going to create the next generation of peace builders, right?
Yeah. Thank you. I feel like you just captured everything perfectly. Yeah, I think that's all of that is absolutely true. And that idea that we are working towards a peaceful future, but also peace right now. And we often talk about how we have our pyramid of peace, which I can show in a moment if that's helpful. But this idea that it's what we're striving for, but it's also just a way of life, and that we can create it right here and right now. And in fact, we often talk about, we have one evening where we do a pretty intensive activity with one another, and then we all sit in a big circle at the end, and week after week after week, these 4th and 5th graders really listen to each other in this circle of over 100 people. And the first time we ever ran the session, we were planning to divide up in smaller groups to talk about it, but the big group discussion was going so well, we just kept it. And now, you know, over 20 years later, we still keep them in that big group after that for that discussion, because they can do it. And one of the things we point out is this is what peace looks like right here. All of us sitting in a circle, really being respectful and really listening to one another and hearing each other's stories. This is peace right here, right now. So yeah, it's about the future, but also right now. And I also completely agree that they know what they don't want before they know what they want, but they're also, I think, when it comes to peace and justice, more in touch with what they do want than many adults. I say to them also on the first day of, we've been doing this work for Mosaic's been around 22 years now, but many of us have been doing peace work a lot longer than that. And in working with thousands and thousands of people doing peace work, of people of all ages, one of the things that I feel has been demonstrated for me is that we all want peace. Everybody. Nobody wants to be hurt. Everybody wants peace. And yet, I think sometimes adults and older kids have been hurt so much. And we always talk about how hurt people hurt other people. And some people have been hurt so much that I think they're separated from that desire for peace. But I believe that everybody wants peace. And the other thing we say to them is everybody wants to make new friends. Even if they say they don't, it's just that, again, because they've been hurt, everybody wants to make new friends. And most of us are a little nervous that it's going to be hard to make new friends. So that if we can remember that during the week at Mosaic, then we can really reach out to each other and help everybody feel welcome. And so we talk about that too. And I think that really does help them make new friends. It's hard to make new friends. It's hard for adults to make new friends, but to make new friends with people from other communities and other schools, that's hard. And so we support them a lot in doing that, because that's the foundation of peace, is that connection.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And two things that come to mind. One is that precisely, I think you mentioned this too, that no matter how far we've come, there's still a lot of isolation, right? And misunderstanding, and even worse, prejudice. So I think that focus on relationship building and meaningful connections is really important. And I'll just add real quick that this video on YouTube has these great comments by former participants. People saying, you know, I remember this from the Mosaic Project. I remember this person, you know, it takes me back. So it's really interesting to see those effects throughout the years as this youth grows up.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and we're very lucky in that the youth leadership program is an amazing part of the program, because we have the youth leaders who most of our youth leaders were with us when they were little too. So we get to see them come back and see them reminding themselves of these lessons, see how they've impacted them so far, and pass it on to the next generation. So that's always a treat. Yeah. And I think this season, like 80% of the youth that were with us when they were little too. So that's great to see.
That is. So I have a couple more questions. I'll just ask one more and then open up for everyone else to ask. But my question is, Laura, as an anthropologist, by training, I'm really interested in knowing more about how learning about society and culture shaped the way you decided to interact with the world. And especially apply some of your anthropological insight when starting to bake what would become the Mosaic Project.
Wow. Okay. What a question. Yeah, I'm gonna say my anthropological training, but also I did a lot of international work before founding the Mosaic Project. I was a program director for Global Roots that does cross-cultural exchange programs and community service programs around the world. And I think both of those things, just thinking of this work from a very broad global perspective, and thinking about just humans and human nature in general, and then putting the layer of culture on top of that, and then even getting more specific to our own community. But definitely when we were working on this curriculum, or have it's continual process, but always looking at how it applies to different cultures, but also how we can tap into that deep inner human nature, and where the similarities are and where the differences are that we're going to honor and celebrate. So we talk about, one of our songs says that we all need hope and care and love. So we focus on what are those fundamental needs that everybody has. We have different strategies of getting our needs met, but everybody needs hope, everybody needs care, everybody needs love, and that can help us empathize with one another. Everybody needs respect, everybody needs dignity, everybody needs friends, community. Like, there's so many things we all need. And so we tap into that human nature, and that helps us empathize. And then we look at, there's lots of different ways of getting these needs met. There's lots of different ways of doing things. There's lots of different cultures, and let's celebrate and honor those. yeah, so I think that is the main way. And I think that having a lot of international experiences, the whole time that I was working for Global Roots and doing all of these other programs, the whole time I was thinking about how is that going to apply in my own community? Because it's one thing when you take kids from the US and they're living in a very, very different culture in villages in Kenya and living with families, and there's language barriers and all sorts of barriers. And yet I would see these incredible bonds develop between students and their host families, like really beautiful bonds across these differences. And the whole time thinking, in a way, it's easier because our worlds are so different. What's harder is doing this in our own community with different people who are in our own Bay Area community. So the whole time I was doing that work, I had my eye towards, yes, and we're going to do this work right here in the Bay Area. We don't have to go to other countries and live with other families in other countries to bridge those gaps again across differences. And in fact, it's harder to do within our own communities, and it's really important to do it within our own communities. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Not one I get very often.
Okay.
I should add one other thing to this, that I did my undergraduate degree was in general anthropology, but my master's was in biological anthropology, focusing on biology, ecology, and evolution. So I think that's where I get it, looking like at our species and cross species. And I used to work, I had a little career as a primatologist before I did international peace work, and I worked with apes and monkeys. And so definitely people are like, how does that work in? And it does, because it is that kinship with across differences. We are different than gorillas, but having worked with a gorilla daily, I will tell you, you can connect soul to soul with a gorilla. You can, and those of you who have pets know that too. And so it is about that connection and respect for all living things in nature. That was very simplified, but yes, my work as a biological anthropologist working with apes and monkeys also really informs what I do.
Wow, thank you. Yes, very, very holistic. Thank you so much. I'll open it up for questions from our audience. You can feel free to put something in the chat or unmute yourself.
I love your work. It reminded me of summer camp and coming from the inner city and working with Peace Corps members and people of all different races. And it really did make a difference. It widened my world. So I was akin to what you were saying.
Thank you so much, Karen. Yeah, and that's the magic of the beautiful outdoors. And just being away from home, right? Just being away from home overnight. For most of our kids, this is their first time away from home overnight. And even that is just an inspiring experience. And even if we were just hanging out and playing, I think it would be a big deal because they're away from home in the outdoors for the first time. And we do a lot more on top of that too with our curriculum. But that camp setting is just essential, and the overnight setting and the week-long overnight. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? And then I would say the most amazing thing that happened to me at summer camp was they had these, not mountains, but high hills. And we would go up at night and I could see the stars. That was the first time I had ever seen the heavens with stars. Living in the city, you don't see that. And I was really afraid. And my camp counselor comforted me. And I still remember that being just knowing what God was.
That's so beautiful. Opening them up to the whole universe. Yeah. Jupiter was really bright in the sky for us all season. We were very lucky, just the way the moon was and the weather was. I think every group got really good view of the stars and we're just wowed by it. Kids saw shooting stars for the first time, saw Jupiter for the first time. And I will tell you a little Mosaic secret. Cassiopeia is also in the sky in the fall and ends up landing during campfire time on our last night, right in the middle of the campfire, the Cassiopeia constellation, which looks like a W, which looks like an M. and it's sideways there. So we were like, look at the sideways M in the sky. That's the Mosaic constellation. From now on, whenever you see that M in the sky, know that we're waiting for you to come back and be cabin leaders. So like, really, that's the Mosaic constellation? Yes. And then somebody once told me, you can't just look at stars and make up your own constellations. I'm like, why not? Isn't that what humans have done throughout time? I'm making up my own constellation.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what they are. It's not actually, you know, a Big Dipper. We made that.
I'm seeing some really great connections here amongst participants. Several have mentioned camps and that formative experience. So thank you for bringing that to the table, Karen. I believe Lou had a question. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, first a comment. So first, I'm just filled with so much joy, Laura, hearing you talk about the work that you're doing. I'm so happy that the Peaceful World Foundation is supporting it, and I just think it's extraordinary work and so important. And you're an extraordinary leader. I mean, you have so much clarity and so much are able to talk about your work with so much clarity and meaning. It's so moving. And I can tell from the video and looking at how people are interacting with each other, you know, you've also created a whole staff and program where people are teaching the kids not just by the things that you're saying, but the way that you're behaving, the way that you are together. And there's nothing more powerful than that. I do have a couple of questions. So I'm curious, you know, so I have a deep background in nonviolence, and I'm really curious if you have nonviolence training, or if the nonviolence principles that you seem to be operating on, if they just came out of your other experiences and training as an anthropologist.
Yeah, well, yeah, digging into the past. Yes. So it evolved from that, but a lot of it also evolved from my experience as a self-defense teacher for women and girls. So while I was at Stanford and I did my undergraduate and graduate work there in anthropology, biological anthropology, I also became involved in a self-defense. I took a self-defense course and then became involved in a self-defense collective of women who taught other women self-defense. And then that got me later into martial arts. So now I've been a martial artist for, wow, over 25 years. And I would say my martial arts definitely impacts my peace work, and my peace work impacts my martial arts. It's definitely, you know, a give and take sort of relationship. So the assertiveness training we do that I think is so fundamental to our work in peace work really comes from my work as a self-defense teacher and learning more about assertiveness and then the way that applies. And then through just experience working with children around conflict resolution, realizing how much resilience and assertiveness needs to be a part of that, and then incorporating that in more and more. So it kind of evolved from all of those experiences and doing some studies in conflict resolution. I would say later we've been around 22 years. I'd say about 5 years into the Mosaic Project, we really did myself and a bunch of staff really delved into MVC, nonviolent communication, and went through many workshops, and then kind of came out the other end of that. And I think it helped us refine our thinking, and then we need to just simplify it again for children. I think a lot of what we do is like we come up with these ideas, we get more complex and adult-like with it, and then we come through at the end and simplify it more. And then often what I find is the simplified ideas are better for all adults, because not just kids, because we can tend to over-intellectualize things, I think, in order to protect our hearts. And so simplifying it for 9 and 10-year-olds and then coming out with it in a more pure form, I find helpful for me. And I think it's helpful I've gotten the feedback that it's helpful for many adults. So we did go through our whole pathway of the MVC training too.
Yeah, that matches my experience and my work also. I'm a big proponent of plain language. Like if I can't say what I'm trying to say very plainly and simply, then, you know, it's not going to reach people. So yeah.
So true.
Another question I have is, so what schools are involved in the program?
Yeah, we work with 25. So for our elementary schools, our 4th and 5th graders, we work with 25 Bay Area schools. A little more than half are Oakland. And then we also have Berkeley schools, San Francisco schools, Castro Valley, Hayward, Marin, like a smattering of Bay Area in general. And people do also ask how we get our schools. We develop a long-term relationship. The idea is that it isn't just 1 year, that we're doing in-school programs in all the grades and follow-up in all the grades and teacher work and parent work, so that it's a long-term relationship. So most of our schools have been with us for a very long time, some of them since literally the very beginning. And then we don't have huge capacity for new schools, but new schools do reach out, and then when there are openings, we work that out. We are working on developing land that a family purchased land for us in Castro Valley, which is right in the heart and the center of all our schools. And we're going through the permitting process right now with Alameda County to try to get permits to turn it into a camp. And when we have our own camp, we will hopefully be able to expand and reach more schools, more communities. Yeah.
Okay, and I want to let other people ask questions too, but I'm curious what you teach them about conflict resolution. I think that's really key, because it's one thing to come together and to feel good and like learn things and enjoy each other, but then when conflicts happen or they go home, they go back into their lives and conflicts happen, you know, what have they learned about how to resolve conflict? So, I mean, you can answer that now or later, whatever, or if there isn't time for it, but I'm curious about that.
I am going to show you just quickly the pyramids, just a little bit of the theory that we're built on, the pyramids of violence and peace. So I think of our music as a musical summary of what we teach, and this is a visual summary of what we teach. And everything we're dismantling this pyramid of violence, and we're transforming it into the pyramid of peace. That's what we do in the week with the kids, but that's what we try to do in all of our workshops. So you can see here this idea that segregation being the foundation of violence and connection being the foundation of peace, but we build up this pyramid and focus on respect, recognizing other people's perspective, empathy, and then we have assertive communication and conflict resolution. And our curriculum of the week really follows like this. So Thursday is really almost all about conflict resolution. The Thursday of the camp, and the kids go to Conflict Resolution College and they earn their doctorates in conflict resolution, and they get a paper diploma, and they also get a cookie diploma, we call it, because they can eat their cookie diploma. And they go to college and they get their CRD, and so it's very intensive in conflict resolution. And we go through our 5 tools for conflict resolution, which are stop, cool off, take a deep breath, listen, talk using sharing your I statements. We go through a big thing around that. Empathize, and make a plan, a purple plan. We call it a win-win plan. So yes, we go very, very in depth in conflict resolution, and this approach is supported by contact theory, which says that if you put kids together from different backgrounds and are just like play, it could even make things worse, but that people have to be brought together for prolonged periods of time, be working on common goals, talk about the issues head on, talk about prejudice, don't pretend it doesn't exist, talk about it. They have to have role models of diverse backgrounds, modeling, as you talked about, interacting and developing friendships across differences, and they have to be given conflict resolution skills. And so that is what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
I will put in the chat, because I'm taking that off, I'll put in the chat, we have some action guides that have those pyramids in them and all of our theory and all of that. And so I'll put that in the chat in just a second.
Thank you for sharing. And those great questions too, Lou. Barbara raised her hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou, for that question. I appreciate it. And I do have a question for you. I'm in Sonoma County, and I'm on a board for a youth arts organization. And, you know, listening to this is so incredibly valuable, because we're now moved our organization into working with more at-risk youth. And one of our secondary schools we're working with have teens, they're all teenagers, have come from the juvenile justice system. They have a daycare on site because many of the youth are parents. And they have violent backgrounds, and we're working through the arts, and we've been working with this one school, and the core of it really is peace, because our lead artists are bringing this diverse group of at-risk teens together to work through through muraling processes. And during the midst of this, there was some violence, there was some shootings, and there was a couple of young girls that were desperately wanting to find this safe place to come together to explore themselves and art. They were just drawn to that peaceful place that they thought was safe. And so the conflict resolution is really, really helpful to us as an arts organization, because that's not exactly what we do. We facilitate the youth to explore themselves through discussions about perceptions of art and project-based management of their feelings. So when our group did experience this, 2 young women came to an evening session, and they had just come out of a fight. And so our leaders, our team leaders did do the best. And I think it was valuable to hear that they just took a simplistic approach and kept things very quiet, you know, gently separated the girls, partnered up with an adult, and then we put them on the wall and just let them paint for an hour or two with pretty much silence, just to kind of allow them to process. So it does speak to me, though, and I so appreciate it as we're moving more towards working in the arts with at-risk kids, to ensure that the schools have a process for that management when conflicts do arise. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. We have a question from Tamara Randall on the chat. She's asking, how often are camps hosted?
Yeah, so we have a fall season and a spring season. Because we rent camps right now, they're crammed together. That's the only way we can do it. So we run 6 sessions in the fall and 6 sessions in the spring. And it's about 90 students per week. So overall, it's about, around 1,000 kids a week, year going through the outdoor school. Our goal when we have our own camp and our own land is to spread that out, make it more year round. So it's, 2 weeks on, a week in the school, week off, 2 weeks on again, and we'll make it much more sustainable for the staff as well, rather than cramming in these 6-week sessions that are super, super intensive, and 7 weeks with the staff training too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave, would you like to share any observation? Because you were part of the grant meeting in 2018, and I know that when Emily and Mark came to speak about the Mosaic Project, you were also quite impressed by their delivery.
No, I just want to say it's great. I've really enjoyed hearing everything, and gee, what a great opportunity for kids and getting together, and it's fun to see and inspiring. So yeah, thank you, Laura.
And I just wanted to say, Laura, thank you so much for the work that you do. I feel like this curriculum should be taught more in school. Honestly, it's amazing. I feel like, if it was taught in school, we'd have a lot less problems with the adult population.
Well, that was my following question, Laura. Do you have any plans to do a camp for adults?
So we do workshops for adults, and we do family camps, and we haven't since COVID, but I think this spring we'll probably bring back family camp. And by family, I mean, you can bring kids or adult kids, or that I put in our activity bank, which can be curriculum for anybody, anywhere, and you can type in the grade level and type in a topic like empathy, and a bunch of activities pop up. So check out our activity bank.
I was just wondering if for the adult camps, if you also have edible diplomas, cookies.
Yeah, that is definitely an inside joke for the staff, but yeah, we do not we have cookies for sure. And also like we'll have like lounges for the adults and all sorts of things for them too.
This has been a really, really wonderful conversation, and I want to invite everyone here, if you haven't yet, to become part of our newsletter so you can keep in the loop and continue, because we have so much to share. Thank you so much, Laura. This has been really wonderful.
So grateful for the opportunity to talk about our work and to meet all of you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the amazing questions.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura, and everyone else.
Thank you.